whatever type of a service business that you are, is ultimately what you are selling is not landscaping, not cleaning, is you're selling your time. You're selling your employees' time. So that is a business's inventory. If you are a business that is not profitable, one of your largest impacts that you can make inside your business to increase your profitability is start measuring your time and tracking your time and trying to be more efficient with your time.
Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow. This week, Adam and Linnemann is back on again, and we're going to focus on Profit Unlocked, ensuring success with one simple shift. So, Adam, welcome back.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So last week, if you didn't catch it, we focused on how you're never going to hit $1 million in sales if you don't follow this one simple rule. If you missed that one, go back and take a listen. We've got a lot of great content in there talking about top line revenue if you're focusing on that and how to broom those clients that are just wasting your time. But this week, our main objectives are going to be, does having a repeatable sales process impact profitability? And what happens when you start with profit first? And how is the P&L and the cash in the bank different? How are they not the same? So Adam, I'm excited to have you back. And my first question for you is, what the heck is profit?
So profit should not be thought about what's left over at the very end. Really, profit should be first, which is kind of what we're talking about on these episodes, is profit first. Making profit a habit in your business, not just an event. Knowing how you arrived at that number and focusing on that as a priority in your business. Businesses need to have profit to thrive. They need to have business profit to grow and to reinvest back into their company, to pay their staff more, and to continue purchasing things like equipment. Wouldn't it be great to go out and buy your next pickup truck or your next dump truck with cash and not having to go to the bank? Why not? So it's important to have profit in your business to where you can grow your business and have a sustainable business.
But the problem with profit, Adam, is the fact that what we do is not in a factory where we can control the weather, we control our people, control the machines. Like, we're out in some of the gnarliest areas on hillsides, hanging on, trying to build these outdoor living projects and landscapes and hardscapes. And first of all, it's crazy to even think how you got to bid these projects. Like, you're guessing, you take your crystal ball out on day one when you're talking to the client and you're like, all right, it's going to take me 3 weeks to do this project. It's going to cost me. And you write your whole list of things out. And it's all a hope at the end of the day for most. They're like, that's about right. I don't really know my production rate on a hillside like this. So we're just going to kind of guess it's going to be more than usual. And the material wise, that I'm going to pad maybe another 20% onto this project just to make sure we have enough. And then you put the bid out to the client. They say, yeah, it sounds good. And now we have to make it happen with what we thought about with our crystal ball in the beginning. Like, we have such enormous risk in what we do because all it takes is one of our employees or one of our team members or one of our partners to do something and back into a tree or bust a bunch of site pipes off or do something, hit a house. And all of a sudden, like, all of that changes. So there's just so much risk that comes with what we do, specifically in larger scale projects for outdoor living spaces. But at the end of the day, how can you protect your profit? I mean, seriously, we're rolling the dice on every project.
Sure. So I think it's important to first of all, I want to talk about two things: is ultimately what we are selling as a business, and secondly, production rates, because I want to talk about that. Okay. So ultimately, what any lawn care and landscape business owner, or whether you're a fence company or a cleaning company, whatever type of a service business that you are, is ultimately what you are selling is not landscaping, not cleaning, is you're selling your time. You're selling your employees' time. So that is a business's inventory. If you are a business that is not profitable, one of your largest impacts that you can make inside your business to increase your profitability is start measuring your time and tracking your time and trying to be more efficient with your time. If you go to a Best Buy store, their inventory is CDs, DVDs, computers, washer and dryers, all that type of stuff. That's what they're selling. That's their time. How are they protecting that? Well, they're protecting that by measuring how much they have in stock through barcodes. They are measuring it by keeping an eye on it with security cameras, and they have a security guard at the door as you go in and out to make sure no one's stealing things. What we are selling is our time, and we need to be protecting that as much as we possibly can. So I want to stress that it's important to understand what every 15 minutes of wasted time is really costing a company. And I also want to discuss production rates if I can. I mean, I could. This is probably one of my favorite topics. Waste elimination.
Let's hit it. Let's do it.
Waste elimination.
Yeah.
I worked with a company back several years ago down in Lakeland, Florida, that was allowing 3 of their crews they had with 3 people in a truck that did a lot of mowing to go over to the gas station 5 days a week, 10 minutes away, and get bags of ice for their truck for the day. Hot in Florida, they're thirsty, they want to have ice cold water. They allow them to go to the gas station and get bags of ice. When you start measuring 3 people in a truck, 10 minutes one way, that's half an hour. What does an average landscaping company bill out in half an hour? Maybe $50, let's just say, for round numbers. 5 days a week is $250 of lost opportunity, right? That just adds up so much over time. And so what we ended up calculating is by that person allowing their crews to go get bags of ice 5 days a week, even though it's just 10 minutes away, is they could buy a $4,000 ice machine and put it in their shop in 6 months. So it's all about the compounding of their time that they're wasting in a business. Yep. Same thing can be said for if you're allowing smoke breaks. Same thing can be said for if you're allowing your team to go pick up. For us, it was an issue picking up our sod. We have a sod grower in the river bottoms here outside of St. Louis where the sod's grown. And I would send the truck to go there before they go to the job site to pick up the sod. 2 people in a truck, 20 minutes to drive to the sod farm. Then they sit there another half hour to get loaded up because there's 2 other contractors in front of them. And then they finally get to the job site. You're better off paying the $75 delivery fee to have the sod delivered directly to the job site. Time is huge when it comes to profitability.
Absolutely, dude. And there's so many little cracks that happen. I know when I shifted from being in the field to being in the office, I found myself running around often feeding the crews the things that they forgot, right? I didn't have a lot of systems and processes. We just kind of, just turn and burn these projects. And next thing you know, like, oh, we need an extra boxwood. We missed one or something like that. We went this morning to the place that didn't have it, to the nursery that didn't have it. So we had to shift it from one kind of boxwood to another. And so, but we only got 5 instead of 6. Oop, we made a mistake. And that's a half hour away. And next thing you know, it's like, all right, well, who's going to go do that? Are we going to stop all the production? So I'm like, all right, I'll just jump in a truck and go do it. So now my time is invested in going 1 hour of driving plus getting that boxwood and bringing it back to them. And I'm like, man, this happened all the time until we started putting systems and processes in place to ensure that wasn't going to happen. And to then have that company be responsible for bringing all those boxwoods, in this example. So if that's the case and they missed one, well, that's a them problem, not an us problem. And now they're out there moving that material back and forth and we're not, to your point, right? So when we look at the cost of having things delivered versus not, oftentimes you can find that the delivery fee is a very, very fair value for the time you're going to save doing it yourself or sending a crew out to do it.
Josh, I mean, it happens to me still today. Back a couple weeks ago, we got a receipt turned into us from an Ace Hardware where one of our landscape crew members went up to Ace Hardware to get a can of wasp and hornet spray. I'm thinking, why are you doing that? We'll buy a case of wasp and hornet spray, and we're going to put a couple cans in every truck back behind the seat. Yeah. All right. That is costing so much that people don't even realize. Oh, it's just just uptown. Not a big deal. It's huge. Our fertilization technician likes to have hand wipes, like antibacterial hand wipes to clean off his hands as he, goes throughout the day. They would go to Ace Hardware and buy those. I'm telling you what, I definitely like supporting small businesses and small business owners, but it's hard to beat Amazon. It is.
Yeah.
We're buying hand wipes, by a tub or 2 at a time from Amazon, getting them delivered directly to our shop. Get that stuff in bulk. Things like jersey gloves, we buy it by the case, from
Yeah.
like maybe Site One, places like that. Have that stuff in stock, ready to go, set out for your cruise, and it makes sense. Don't let them go and buy the stuff as they need it and that type of thing. Have it prepared.
No, 100%. And there's no doubt having that stuff is going to save you a ton of time. Now, I like to switch gears here and get into a subject that's even more near and dear to the heart, which is sales process. And you
Okay.
listeners, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, about a process and how that might sound like you're putting handcuffs on and you're like, oh, I got to do this one thing all the time and I got to do it a certain way. It sounds painful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on sales process and having an expectation in the sales process for your clients and for your teams. And does it actually lead to profitability, or is it just a big pain in the ass?
I think anything that you can do that is repeatable increases profitability. I'm going to go back to our estimating software. All right. We use LMN. I know there's a dozen options out there, but our software that we use is repeatable. If I were to estimate a aeration overseeding job, if I were to estimate a fertilization job, if I were to estimate installing a patio, we have production rates put into our software, and either by measuring square footages and having these templates already pre-built into our software, typically anybody that estimates the job that is measuring the same square footage and so on is coming up with the same pricing. That is
Mm-hmm.
huge. And so
Yep.
what is repeatable is typically profitable, and that's just so important. Production rates are key. If you haven't measured how long it takes on average to do certain what you may want to consider average jobs, it's important. Maybe it's a 20 by 20 patio in a flat yard with great accessibility. It takes 16 man hours. And then maybe you measure another job with more difficulty and maybe it takes 32 man hours. I always estimate things with a crew of 2 8-hour days. So 16, 32 would be 2 days and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to kind of measure what you want to pay attention to, and what you measure can be improved
Exactly.
with
No,
your
the
process.
measurement side is, and
Yeah.
that's with anything. I mean, that's why systems and processes are such a kind of a buzzword in any business, is because if you can do the same thing over and over again, and you can then take a look and see what your results are from that. Say it's a sales process, like you have a certain way of doing it, maybe initial call, you get into a questionnaire, into discovery call, and then you're finally working out to the job site where you can actually meet with the clients on site, but you're doing most of that work in-house. And you have a certain set of questions you ask, a certain process you go through that you bring every client through. The cool part about that, at least that we found and our students have, is that when you do that, you can become really masterful in that. You can be very good at communication. You can start getting a sense of when at certain point you have customers that are, like we talked in the last episode, like the red flags that start to pop up. Like what is a red flag? Well, the wife never shows up to the calls and she's supposed to be here, right? And that means that she's just not either disinterested or whatever. But we found that clients that don't have both decision makers there have a much lower likelihood of actually turning into a project. So if you start seeing these things ahead of time, because you keep doing the same thing over and over, you can be much more effective and efficient, to your point. Instead of going out every time and trying to figure it out each time and winging your sales, you can actually get really focused on what is working and what's not. And like, wait a minute here. I remember last time something like this happened. We're going to take them through the same process and see if we end up getting stuck at an objection right on price. Let's see if that's the case. And if it is, I remember what I did last time and I know how to get around that now, right? Because you're doing the same thing. It's not like you're winging it, constantly hoping for better results, but not actually putting in the work to create that process that you can then work from. And if the cool part about processes is that you're not blaming people for them. If something doesn't work in a process, you can adjust the process, and others can learn how to do a process. Where, some of the hardest thing with sales is what happens when I want to scale my business. If I'm the only one selling right now, what am I going to do when I want to go and double my revenue in a year? Right? I want to double my revenue. I've been profitable. I want to double my revenue. What am I going to do? Am I just going to double how much work I'm doing? I'm already doing 100 hours a week. Like, how the hell is that going to work? Like, it doesn't. You have to have something, and you can't just get another salesperson in and be like, hey, go do you. Right? You're going to crash that ship quickly. So it's a matter of having something repeatable that you can actually work from as a standard for how your company connects with people, communicates with them, and all of that stuff. So That's one of the things that has made such a difference in our business, is having that repeatability in the sales process. What have you found, Adam?
Yeah, definitely, definitely important to do things consistently and not go rogue, right? With the sales process on your estimating, and then too, with the sales process and doing that repeatedly, just learning from mistakes and then tweaking them to always be better. Um, with sales processes, we ask two or three key questions whenever a customer calls in at Linnemann Lawn Care and Landscaping. First of all, is do they have a budget? And probably 60% of the time they don't. So one of the things that we do is we kind of ask them, what kind of project are you looking to have done? And then also, do you know what things cost when it comes to the project that you're wanting done? On our website, we actually have a pricing page, and it kind of gives our customers an idea of what a patio might cost with a range, what a fire pit might cost with a range. It talks about our minimums with our fertilization programs. It talks about putting up holiday lighting and so on. Gives ranges on that. So that's a process that we talk through with the client, and then it also helps with screening to make sure it's something that is in their budget. We also ask them, how soon do you want to get the project done? If they want to have it done 2 weeks from now for Joe's graduation and we're booked out 6 weeks, there's no sense of us even estimating the project. We have to
Right.
be front and forward with the customer on that and let them know where we're at. And then the other thing we always try to do too is just kind of take a peek at the neighborhood that the customer lives in, to see if it's a home that we typically want to work with. We know who our ideal customer is based off of research and studies and just talking to all the people, or talking internally with our team of who the people we typically work for. We know that our average homeowner is a homeowner that has at least $100,000 or more of income producing revenue, that lives in a home that's $300,000 or $400,000 or more, that's educated, and those are our types of clients that we typically work with. Now, there's always some variances here and there, but that's who Linnemann serves, and that's through our years of knowledge and studying who our customers are.
That's a great point. I'd love to go deeper if you're cool with that. Any listeners out there that haven't really considered, really identifying, we call it the perfect or the ideal client avatar. Like, who is my ideal client? The client, everyone's had clients that in the past are like, what, if I could just grab that client and carbon copy them and I could work for that exact same client, or ones very much like them forever, it would be great. They paid on time. They loved their ideas. They were, they had gratitude. They were very nice to work with. They had a lot of friends. They, all of that. Like, we all have at least a handful of clients that we can reflect on and think, what, those clients were amazing. So it's a matter of going back and figuring out, well, all right, where do they work? Those last 3 or 5 clients like that, where do they work? What do they do? Where do they live? What do they do for fun? How big do they have families? Do they how old are they? Where they get educated? Like, what, all of those things, right? Once we start, there's common truth in that. So I'd love for you to go a little deeper into how you started to break that out, so you could know that you were really talking to the ideal client and not just some lead that you found on Facebook and wonder why you can't close them.
Sure. I think it's just being aware of where your leads are coming from. And I can't really necessarily think of how this was developed other than just through conversations and team meetings. But where you market is important, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to go put up yard signs in neighborhoods that have double wide homes. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm being honest with you. You're going to put yard signs up inside homes that have fancy subdivisions where people drive BMWs,
Yeah.
right? Those are the type of people that I want to work for. And I just think it's just somewhat common sense, but also some research and knowing where your customers are and what they do for a living. Facebook advertising has came a long ways with demographics. We market to not an 18-year-old that, for advertising landscape lighting. We market to people that are 30, 35 years of age up to, 65 or 70 years of age that are in financing.
Yep.
So you can dial in pretty good and know who your ideal customer is and know who has money to spend with you. I think that's
Yep.
important.
It is, and isn't, and trying to find those clients that are insulated from market shifts. If you're dealing with a client who's, their job is focused on, hey, if times are good, they're doing well, and when times are bad, they're struggling. That's a hard, if that's your ideal client, that's a hard nut to crack when it comes to, times are tight, so all of your clients start to dry up. So if you're working with clients who are, let's say, in healthcare or in finance, or they're entrepreneurs, and they tend to always be well insulated, there's a higher probability that you're going to be just fine when things change in the market. You might not have as much demand, but those clients can still say yes. Those clients are, so when you're building your ideal client avatar, it's a matter of knowing, okay, well, are they married or single? How many kids do they have? Where do they travel? What subdivision do they live in? What do they do when they travel? What kind of experiences are they looking for, especially in the outdoor living sector, right? Well, like, if they're inside people and they don't like coming outside, the chance of advertising to them and having them spend six figures on a backyard they never use is pretty minimal. But we found that it's, there's certain groups that do love that love outdoors. They love nature. They want to be outside more. They're adventurous. Like, that's the kind of people can say yes, emotionally, and then also financially say yes to you as well. So if you're advertising to people that can't say yes but love the idea, right, that's a problem. Like, you get all excited, but they can never really say yes to you. So having a clear idea of who you need to market to that can say yes. If you're selling $5,000 landscape, rehabs, most people can say yes to that. But if you're selling $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 outdoor living space full transformations, you better be very dialed in on where you're sending, or where your marketing is pointing, and
Right.
who it's speaking to. So to know them intimately is super helpful.
Something I haven't done in probably a couple of years, but I need to get back to doing it is there's probably a lot of contractors out there that probably uses QuickBooks, right? It's a very
Mhm.
popular accounting software. You can run a report by sales, by customer summary, and run that report, let's just say for the last 12 months, and export that report to like an Excel spreadsheet, and then filter it from who spent the most to who spent the least.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool to look at the top 30% of your customers that spent the most money with you, and do a little something extra for them? Ask for
Yep.
referrals. Those are the type of people that you want to really be getting more information from, and seeing who they're friends with, and seeing
Yep.
who they network with, what kind of professions do they do for a living, and so on. It's a great way to filter
100%.
out.
Yep. Yep. Birds of a feather, right? Especially if you're looking to go deeper and find other clients in there. So yeah, all good stuff, dude. It's very important. I think one of the things that I've learned along the way is to stay in your lane when it comes to, we talked in previous episodes about, how not every client's a good client, not every project's a good project. And there's oftentimes clients will ask us for things, to do things that we don't normally do. Maybe it's drainage. Maybe it's putting in a new door in your house. Maybe it's whatever. And we're like, well, we're kind of hungry for work, so sure, we can do that. And next thing you know, you're trying to figure it out on the house, and you find out that you can't be profitable because you completely, you know, made a mistake on how much time you thought it was going to take to do this. So now you're stuck with this project that you're not going to make any money. So my overall thought would be, listeners, when you're going to a property and you're looking at the things that they want to have done, you can say no to parts of that project. If you stay in your lane, like, hey, you know what? I'm downright dangerous when it comes to everything landscape, everything hardscape, when it comes down to it, walls and patios and plantings and lighting, like, that is my sweet spot. Stay in the zone, stay in your sweet spot, because there's a higher probability of, and less risk, higher probability of profit and less risk for that profit. If you have all the equipment, you have the knowledge within your staff, you know exactly what you're doing, versus, hey, well, Mrs. Jones asked me to, do I build sheds? And I'm like, well, sure, I build a shed, not a problem. And they go to the shed company and say, oh, they're charging $5,000 for a shed. I'll do it for $4,500. And then if she says yes, we'll figure it out. And the problem is that the time spent building that shed and trying to teach your hardscape crew how to build a shed because she asked for it, holy moly, you could have bought her a damn shed and put it there, right? And probably saved money. So my point is, stay in your lane, know what you're downright dangerous in, train your teams. And if somebody comes along, a client comes along and asks you to do something you've never done before, either make sure that it's well padded for your learning curve, or you say, look, I don't do that, but I know somebody who does. I've got a friend, Sam, he does this kind of work. We can get him involved if you'd like to as well. And not have to say yes to everything, because you know what? Your client's not going to be happy later if you either can't do it or find out you're going to lose money and you're just going to lose interest in the project or whatever it might be. Stay in your lane. Understand that you don't have to say yes to everything.
Back to kind of the ideal client, if I could mention just two more quick things. My friend Darren, he always asks for, on his intake form on his website, the customer's birth date. He just wants to know like the month and day. And what's it called when like someone is like, what month were you born in, Josh?
I was born in October.
You're born in October. So like, what is your sign for October? Some people believe, what's that?
Libra.
Some people believe a Libra. They believe in like the not the history, but what's the word I'm looking for? But Libras maybe emotional people, or maybe they're outgoing people, or whatever. There's some truth to some of that, and that's what my friend Darren does as a conversation starter with his customers when he goes to their job site when he meets them. So that's why he always asks for their birth date. I always thought that was kind of fun and interesting. And then the other thing is just be aware of your surroundings when you go to a job site. I think it's important to maybe have a sales conversation at the dining room table at the customer's house. Go in and see what kind of pictures they have on their walls. Is there kids' sports equipment laying around the yard? Because those are always good conversation pieces to have and connect with your customers. I was at a house last week, and the customer had a blow up Kansas City Chiefs football player in their front yard, and he had a barbecue on a smoker. So that was a great conversation piece. It's the connection, I think, goes a long way too with making the sale and making the customer relationship there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, customers want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. And if you guys are similar, have similar interests, they already feel like there's less of a barrier to do that. So if you can, it's good small talk, good rapport build. But to get into the house and to sit down at the table and to be invited into that, to that private space is already showing a lot of trust. Now it's a matter of just keeping it up, of course. So one last thing I want to hit here before we wrap up. And I know we talked about this in another episode, but I can't drive this home enough, listeners, is how the P&L and the cash in the bank are different. Can you walk us through that, the difference between a profit and loss statement and how it's not the same as the numbers you see in your bank account?
Sure. So your profit and loss statement shows a snapshot of a month or a year or whatever of your in and out of your money, of certain types of monies. And what is not on your profit and loss statement typically is things that live over on your balance sheet. And so things that live on your balance sheet might be a mortgage that you have, say, on your shop. It might be the 4 trucks that you have payments on in your mini excavator. And the problem is if your profit and loss shows that you have 10,000, let's just say you're $1 million company and you have 10% profit on your P&L. So you should have $100,000 of cash in the bank. Most don't have that because they're paying down the mortgages and the loans that they have on the things that live in the balance sheet. That's why that money is not in that bank account. So your P&L may show you're profitable, but you might not have the money in the bank account because you are paying down the debt of the things that live on the balance sheet. And so that's basically the reason why. You got to be careful with what you spend and make sure it's a good purchase and that it's an efficient piece of equipment that you're going to use.
Absolutely. And it's going to increase your productivity, and it makes sense to own it and not rent it and all those things. But, I know that there's so many times you look at a profit and loss, you're like, damn, we're doing okay. This is pretty cool. And you look at the bank account, it's like, wait, it says 150 on the profit and loss. Why is there only maybe 75 in the bank account? Like, what's going on here? This doesn't make any sense. I can't take my profit and loss statement to the bank and say, can you loan me this? Or, here's some money for you. You can't spend a profit and loss statement. You can't spend that money. That's all bookkeeping mumbo jumbo. The reality is you can only spend what's in the bank account. So be very careful not to be confused by that profit and loss, but actually look at your bank account and be like, wait a minute here. And if you've done what we've talked about over some of these episodes with the profit first system and creating those different accounts and having profit, something you pull off the top and put in an account right away, and then you have to manage the rest off, and you're going to find out really quick whether you bid that job right or not. Because if you didn't bid it well enough and you're not working with, an actual software CRM or working with like synced up with Wes or something like that to know your numbers ahead of time, then you better start thinking about doing that, because if profit's made when you sell the project, not when you're done. right? You can't go back and be like, hey, man, Mrs. Jones, we did this project and it turned out really well. I didn't make any money. Can I increase it by 10% so I can? Like, that's not how this works. We have to know it ahead of time. They expect us to be responsible for that we're doing what we can do to make sure we can make sure this business is in business in order to come back and fix things that might break, or just for them to be able to refer you to somebody else, right? So at the end of the day, it's really about making sure that you understand the difference between profit and loss money and cash in the bank, which is actual money. And to know that if you don't have it in the bank, it's because you aren't charging enough on the front side, or you're spending too much in the middle.
Absolutely. A silent profit killer, we were talking about time earlier. A silent profit killer that I see in a lot of businesses is they're not charging for logistics and drive time. It's huge. So that's something to think about as well. Just another tip.
Yep. And I'm going to throw one more in here before we wrap up. How much time, listeners, are you spending going out to meet with clients on the sales side of things? The average closing rate in our industry is 25 to 30%. Right? Let me say that again. That's 3 out of 10. That means 7 other meetings that you went on were a waste. And if you just take 1 hour to get there, 1 hour to meet with Mrs. Jones, 1 hour to come home, between stopping for gas and going for a snack, whatever it might be, like, that's 3 hours per lead. Times 7 is 21 hours. And if you're doing that in a week, holy moly. Right. Imagine taking 21 hours off. It would be cheaper for your company if you just took 21 hours off and went and fishing or did something else. It would be cheaper.
Love it.
That's another huge spot where so many are losing left and right. And that's why it is my absolute mission in our industry to help our brothers and sisters get to a 75% closing rate or higher, so they can spend more time with their families and not spend so much time with clients who don't have the ability to say yes, and that really don't even know what they're getting involved with. They don't even know what costs are. They don't know any of those things ahead of time. Let's do that all in the office before we spend time with them and drive. That's a huge part. So my target, 75% closing rate for our industry. And we can't do that if we're putting our head in the sand and just doing the way we've always done it. We have to challenge ourselves. I have to challenge the industry to start actually penciling how much time they're taking on all these leads and how many they're actually closing. Most don't know what their closing rates are.
Yeah, good point. And that's something we started doing too, is charging small consultation fees, $50, $25, $100. Tell the customer it gets credited back if they accept the job. Yep. You get a call for a patio. Okay, we have $100 consultation fee. That also helps with screening process too.
100%. It's a pre-qualifier, right? It's a pre-qualifier. Are you open to paying for design? How about, a consultation fee? Put some money where their mouth is. And if they say yes, that's great. That means there's a high probability that they might want you. If it's no, I'm not paying for you to come out, then thank you. Good luck with your project, right? It changes the game. So listeners, I want you to consider challenging the way you're doing things. If you aren't charging for design or aren't charging for your consultations, to consider doing that as a simple way to start getting less to go out on. I know that might be a little tough to hear right now, especially in the fall, right around an election. And, you figure, hey, if I can just get out in front of everybody, I have a higher probability of closing them. And that might be the case. But think about how much time, if you can go back over all of 2024, how many leads you in sales calls you went on and how many you sold, and start putting the math together, and you find yourself on the average of 25 to 30%. Imagine if you had a process in place where you could get 75% or more. What would that do for your business, your life? That's just a big question to ask. What could you do with that extra time? So guys, I'm going to wrap up on that today. Adam, thank you for coming back.
Thanks,
next week, guys, we're going to focus on how to raise your prices and close more work immediately. You're not going to want to miss this one. So Adam, thanks for stopping in, and I can't wait to talk to you guys later.